Christopher, and I will be your moderator for this section. So this section is a workshop. So during the last section, Cameron did say a lot of things about creating an impactful project, charity. I know that this session will be providing us with more opportunity to probably ask our questions that we were unable to ask in the last section. Also, just to bring to your notice as well, that Cameron has as well shared in the WhatsApp group a link probably for us to have a quiz that he did say about in terms of trying to navigate your way, trying to know which of the routes for you to go in terms of having an impactful charity project. So without much ado, I know I already did an introduction and a brief biography about Cameron, so he's not new to us. So join me as I welcome to the podium Cameron as he takes on the workshop on a topic, starting high impact charity project. Join me together as we welcome Cameron. Thank you.
Thanks, Christopher. So like Christopher said, it's going to be a workshop on starting a high impact project or charity. I'm going to leave a lot of time for Q&A for this session. I know we didn't have that much time from the last one, so please do ask me any questions. Also, this is going to be a more interactive session, so have your notepads and pens or make notes on your phone as well. And I'm going to be asking some questions, so please shout out some answers too. So with that said, let's get started. So in this workshop, we're going to be covering, if you're a good fit for starting a high impact project and charity and what it may involve as well. So there's going to be a self-assessment aspect to this. So let's get started. So the first thing is I want you guys to guess what the limiting factor might be for starting a high impact project or charity. Maybe shout out some answers if you have any guesses. Funding, that's a good idea. Keep going. Program management. Any more? Some good ideas there. So the main limiting factor is people, talented people like yourselves. So that's really what they're looking for at Ambitious Impact. It's a bottleneck you guys can help solve. So thanks for some guesses there. I mean, here we have the research, which is essentially out there already. The funding is there for impactful projects. So yeah, it's you guys. So to talk a little bit about Ambitious Impact, mostly I'm going to be talking about the Charity Entrepreneurship Program for this one, because I think that's the most relevant program for you guys, but there's also the for-profit one, the research one. So what this looks like is they do very extensive research. They have a whole research system using iterative depth and so forth. And then you go through the incubation program. They'll pair you up with the ideas, and you'll pick kind of what cause area you're interested in. And then you'll be paired with co-founders. And ideally, you come out with a new charity that help provide you with seed funding and mentorship going forward. And then, you hopefully come out with a high impact charity. So this is some of the charities that got started. You can see FEM there. LEAP, that's another one that does work in Africa. Fortify Health is doing work in India. There's Fish Welfare from doing animal welfare stuff. This is actually a bit outdated. I think since then, there's been like way more charities that have been successful and come through the program. So here's a few. So again, this is a bit outdated. Since this slide, there's probably been double this amount of charities, around 35, in all different cause areas. But here are a few examples up to 2021. And I think now they've done about 2.5 million in seed grants. So, there's a substantial amount of money to be given to start, high impact organizations. Like a few highlighted here. Animal Advocacy Careers is a great one, and you can do that online course if you're interested in animal advocacy. You You've got Animal Ask, FEM, all these different ones. So, this could be you in 1 or 2 years as well. So you could be up here. So moving on to more of the workshop aspect. So this is how you can kind of tell if you might be a good fit for starting a charity or a impactful project. One that I've linked is the CE quiz. We're not going to do it now because I think it's just logistically a bit too difficult, but we are going to do the self-scoring. So we're going to go through different traits and you guys are going to score yourself. And then at the end, we'll see how excited you are about this idea of starting a project and going through. And then here are the other 3 that are not highlighted in green. These are more things you can do yourself to test your fit. So one is working out or volunteering at an early stage nonprofit. A lot of people do that and then end up going through the program. So they might join an existing nonprofit that came through this program. They'll get experience that way and then they'll join the program and start their own. So that's a really good way to join the program. You can also just go through the application process and then get a feel of how that was and if you feel like you answered the questions well. Number 5 here, which I think is probably the most invaluable thing you could do, is starting your own project independently, because you'll get an understanding of what the actual challenges are, what you enjoy, what you dislike. So those are some things you can do outside of this talk as well. So as I mentioned here, definitely do go and do that quiz. I've linked it in the WhatsApp. It will give you personalized feedback and an idea if it's a good fit as well. Okay, so I want you guys to shout again. What do you think are some traits of a high impact founder? Any ideas? Okay, well, I can go over some of the ones that are not the best ideas. So age, expertise, personality, existing network. People often think these are requirements for founding a nonprofit. Through running the incubation program, they've actually found that these are not as relevant as you might think they would be. There's people from all different ages. I think the youngest person that went through the program was 18, and maybe the oldest is in their 50s. So there's a wide range of different people that go through the program. Same with expertise. You might think you need a lot of expertise. You really don't. You can learn while you're on the job. There's the lead elimination project. They didn't really have a background in lead at all, and they quickly became some of the world's leading experts on lead. So you can build expertise really quickly after going through the program as well. And then personality, I think when people think of entrepreneurs, they probably think of very extroverted, out there people. That's really not true either. There's many introverted people, myself included. A whole wide range of different personalities and types of people. So don't feel limited by any of these factors. Existing network, again, it's helpful, but it's not necessarily needed. You'll be able to tap into a strong existing network in the community, essentially. So these are some of the things you don't necessarily need. So these are the 5 traits that Charity Entrepreneurship, or AIM, has discovered that are important. Number 1, ambitiously altruistic. This is hopefully everyone in this room who's interested in EA, just really putting yourself out there. Being results and outcome focused. We'll dive a bit more into that one later. And then startup culture fit, like really being able to pivot, exchange ideas, and work in a very fast-paced and adaptable environment. And then number 4 is another EA sort of one, having a scientific mindset and good epistemics, essentially following the evidence and kind of reasoning as opposed to leading with your heart, maybe. And then finally, collaboration. This is so important. You have to be able to work with others. You have to have a collaborative mindset. Really, when you're running a project, it's all about your team as well. You can't do these things alone. Okay, so now we're going to go through and self-score all these different traits. So have your pen and paper ready or your phone. So we're going to go through these 5, score them all out of 10, and I'm going to give a more in-depth description and some questions you could think about to score yourself. So starting off with ambitiously altruistic, here are a few different traits to think about. So putting impact first in your worldview and action. So I think this can involve some sacrifice. Maybe you have a very other lucrative opportunity, but you're going to put impact first and do it that way. Being motivated by impact, a high bar, a keen sense of counterfactuals. So that means like what you could be doing otherwise. Instead of doing this, having a low ego, and I would say self-awareness is important too. So rate yourself out of 10 on this factor. And here are some questions you can think about. So if you're highly involved in EA, if not, why not? Have you started your own altruistic project? Have you done volunteering? Do you have a high bar for impact and keep pushing that bar up? So I'll give you some time, rate yourself out of 10, and you can follow a few of these questions. So maybe just take a minute to rate yourself here. So I think this trait is really at the core of, starting an impactful project. You have to really care deeply and want to make a difference. And it is something you can cultivate as well. I think spending time around other altruistic people can push you forward. Okay, so let's move on to the next trait. So this one is being results focused. Essentially, this is about kind of your M&E, your measurement and evaluation, and focusing on outcomes, not just what you hope is going to happen or your hypothesis. So for this one, you can use the 80-20 mindset. It's about not striving for perfection, but doing things good enough and then moving on as well. So not thinking about what other people think of your results, not thinking about vanity metrics, but thinking about the actual outcome. Are you affecting people's lives? Are you affecting animals' lives? Are things actually changing and improving? And I think for this one, you have to be quite self-reflective and think about if you're actually having an impact, which can be a challenge. Great. So also rate yourself out of 10 on this one. Here's a few different questions you can go through. Like I said, the first one is reflecting. Are you someone who thinks really hard about outcomes, checks you're actually making a difference? And then second one, have you actually made any self-directed, results-oriented changes in terms of your career? Are you actually applying, the results and what you find out? How often do you get derailed by new shiny opportunities versus kind of staying true to impact, what you're doing? And then finally, do you have a good sense of cause and effects for results? So again, rate yourself out of 10 on this one too. Okay, moving on to the next trait. This one is about startup culture fit. So I think anything to do with entrepreneurship, you're going to have to be very comfortable pivoting, moving fast, iterating, learning through doing MVPs, experiments, feedback loops. MVPs is minimum viable product, so it's the most basic version of your program or what you want to do. You have to have a lot of resilience. There's going to be a lot of pressure. There's going to be some very difficult aspects while you're doing a project. I can definitely attest to that one. I think being comfortable with uncertainty. There's so many points you're making decisions under uncertainty. So that's another aspect. Working under complexity, novel solutions, and self-motivation. I think this one's really big. I think a lot of us, go through studies, go through corporate jobs. And if you're doing this, you're not going to have a boss telling you this is your deadline. You're going to have to make your own deadlines and stick to them and make a difference that way as well. So again, please rate yourself out of 10 on this. Here's a few different questions. So do you describe yourself as highly self-driven and motivated? Are you someone who can persevere when things get difficult and have a lot of grit and push through difficult situations? Because there's going to be a lot, that's definitely for sure. Are you a leader? Do you come up with novel ideas? Have you completed self-study? A few different ones there. So I'll give you 30 seconds or so to rate yourself out of 10 here as well. So you don't have to answer all of these questions, but these should give you a general feel of what it means to have a kind of startup culture fit. And you can probably tell from, previous projects you've been involved in if you're that kind of person who comes up with ideas, pushes things forward. So this one is about scientific mindset and good epistemics. Essentially, this is about evidence. A lot of the talks have mentioned evidence. So this is about actively seeking out evidence, being open to new evidence, being open to changing your mind as new evidence comes through. I think we're always seeing new research in every single different field, including animal welfare, global health, family planning. So you have to be able to adapt to new evidence. Can you critically assess and look at evidence through papers? Are you able to balance various different opinions? Like you might have a researcher's opinion versus a field expert. How do you weigh off two differing opinions and decide what the truth is and where to adapt and so forth? I think the next one about deferring is very interesting because it's about deferring when it's right to, and you have a high level of trust, but also not deferring too much and being able to think for yourself. Again, being humble and open-minded. I think these are very common EA traits that we look to have in the EA movement. And then transparency in your reasoning. I think the EA movement is quite good at this. Lots of numbers, results, reasoning, budgets are all published transparency. So it's a good aspect of EA. And then finally, handling abstract conversations with new ideas and being able to integrate them. So a few questions here on this one, and rate yourself out of 10 here. So can you understand different types of evidence and assess their strengths and weaknesses, and trade them off using weightings or this sort of thing? Do you give feedback to others? How good are you at taking feedback? Both two very important aspects. Did you choose an empirical field of study or work? Are you someone who already looks at evidence? How do you feel when you get criticized? How often do you change your opinion? Can you name something that would change your opinion about a topic? That's an important one. I think many people would struggle to answer that about their strongest beliefs, for example. And then how did you get on at school at university? So I'll give you a bit of time to rate yourself out of 10 here as well. So the final one I want to talk about is having a collaborative personality. This one's crucial, and I think a lot of people struggle to communicate with different types of people who maybe have very different beliefs themselves. So, there's different types of stakeholders within EA and outside of it. I could talk about, for example, funders. The way you want to approach funders is very different from how you might want to approach a researcher. So having really strong communication skills, collaboration is really key. I would also say that you have to really think about the team you're going to build, because this is not a one-man venture. You're going to have your co-founder, that's going to be your kind of right-hand person, but you're also going to have employees, colleagues, volunteers. You need to be able to collaborate seamlessly with a variety of different people and get on with them too. So yeah, being honest and considerate, just general good communication skills is very key. And it's something you can work on. There's many books about communication out there, and various different postings, YouTube videos, and so forth. So, all of these can be developed as well. Okay, so maybe a few questions here to think about, and again, rate yourself out of 10. Have you been enjoying talking to different people at this conference? Do you have different types of friends, in work and private? How would you rate your own communication skills? Are you able to stay patient and stoic when annoying things are happening? Working in customer service, that can be a challenging one. Have you figured out how to approach different personalities? Because there is a very different approach towards different people. Are you honest when things are very difficult? I will say that, there's a bit of a joke that having a co-founder is like being married. So you're going to have very difficult conversations about decisions, differences of opinion on your main program, on budget. Should we do this? Should we do that? It's about being honest, diplomatic, kind. Do you often apologize in an argument? That's another important one. Things are going to go wrong. Are you able to resolve that? How are you in conflict situations? So again, rate yourself out of 10 here. Okay, so moving on from that. And then finally, as a bonus for 5 points. Do you have cause area expertise? So this would be in global health, family planning, mental health, animal welfare. Do you have any background in this? Do you have interest in this? Have you started projects in this? So maybe score yourself out of 5 on this as well. Okay, so that is all of the different traits. So you should now have a score out of, it's going to be 55 with the added 5 points for these 5 traits that are highly valued for starting a impactful nonprofit. If you want to discuss with the person next to you your scores and why you scored it, that would be cool too. But overall, this should give you a overview of how you're scoring in terms of this being a good fit. Feel free to think more about it as well. And there's also the quiz that's going to give you some insight into that too. But this should give you some idea of where you kind of land in terms of, is this a really good fit? Is this not a good fit at all? Am I somewhere in the middle? And like I said, maybe you didn't score so highly on everything, but all of these traits you can work on. Being involved in EA is a really excellent way to do that. I'm sure there's many opportunities through EA Nigeria and so forth. And you can work on all of these. And I think, as you go through your career and do different things, you'll naturally improve at these too. So another few questions to think about and reflect on. Where am I strong at? Like maybe you're a great collaborator, maybe you're a great communicator, but you're not so good with the evidence. Well, one thing is maybe you can find a co-founder who balances that out. They're a researcher, they know what they're doing there, but maybe they're weaker on the communication skills. So you can do that side of things, they can do another one. Or maybe you want to work more on your research skills or various different aspects of it as well. And then maybe second, think about the evidence. Like, what are you basing your scores on? How are you actually scoring yourself? Are you being honest in your self-assessment? Do you have any biases that are affecting your scoring? I think this one's key. Like I said, self-awareness. Because then you can reflect and say, I'm a bit biased in this way, so maybe I need to adjust my score down a little bit. And you can use your evidence from doing work and actual outcomes as well. So then 5, think about what traits you could cultivate or improve. Like I said, there's so much out there to improve all of these, and like practice, again, is super useful. There's so many books on communication, for example, conflict resolution. You can learn how to do research. So there's a lot out there to improve on and get better at. And then finally, think about, has this updated any of your understandings or perspectives through this self-reflection? So yeah, a few different questions to think about and reflect on there as well. So the good news is there's a lot of support for these different aspects through the training program as well. And you don't need to be perfect at all of them. You can improve them. And the program also, I think the program goes over a lot of the scientific aspects of it, as well as how to talk to funders, stakeholders. It really covers most of everything. But you can always come in with a high level or a low level. So they're really looking more for the potential. So it's just a quick overview of what the incubation program application looks like. This is specifically for charity entrepreneurship. So you guys will already have seen, I posted the application form. I think they might have shortened it since then, so it's probably a bit shorter than that. If you pass through that round, you'll be given a test task. That's only a couple of hours long. Then they'll have a short interview, 30 minutes. Then there's another test task, which is a bit longer. Finally a live interview at the end as well. So it's a relatively short process, I would say. You can prepare for all these different stages through thinking about and reflecting on those traits and trying to improve them. So this is some of the stuff covered on the program itself. So you have monitoring and evaluation, statistics, task management, registration, forming a board, budgeting, decision-making. I guess for me, I want to highlight the decision-making. This to me is like the most crucial aspect. everything you do is basically a decision. So if there's one like meta skill to work on and improve on, I would say strategic decision making can be very valuable. Monitoring evaluation is also a crucial one. Like maybe if you're not good at it, I'm not the best at it, my co-founder is a lot stronger at it, then monitoring evaluation might be the thing you're better at. There's also the kind of operational aspect, so it's budgeting, registration, board. If you're really good at that, that can be useful too. So maybe think about what type of person you are. Are you that M&E researcher type? Are you a decision maker, entrepreneur, business person? So these categories can help see where you could fit with someone else and where someone else could cover your weaknesses as well. So these are the main decisions you would be making on the program. Basically, what kind of cause area you're thinking about. So, as I mentioned before, the different cause areas: animal welfare, global health and development, mental health, family planning, and then they're coming up with new ones as well all the time. So if you've got your cause area, and it could be several, for me, when I went through the program, I was looking at both animal welfare and mental health. Then you would be looking at various different ideas within that cause area. So there's going to be specific interventions for mental health. For example, it could be online therapy app, or it could be running in-person sessions. Both of those have actually gone through the program and been founded. So that even within your cause area, there's very different ideas. And like I said, charity entrepreneurship, AIM, they do a lot of research into the ideas as well. So you don't need to have one, but maybe the cause area is more important to think about. And then the co-founder matching, like I said earlier, you want to think about what kind of role am I? Am I the operations person? Am I the researcher? Am I the CEO type decision maker? And then how can I match with someone who fulfills my kind of like weaker areas? And then we make a really good team. And finally, country. I mean, I think you guys here in Nigeria have an excellent opportunity because there's so many, different things that can be done here. There's, like I said in the last talk, there's a lot of ambitious impact projects here, including ourselves. So that's another area as well. And then these are the three things that are really the fuel to the rocket ship that's hopefully going to take off and help you start the impactful project. So the first one is money. This is usually through fundraising. I mean, now they have very large seed grants. When I went through the program, they were a lot smaller. It was a lot harder. So you guys are in a way better position applying now and going through the program. The second one would be wisdom. So this is going to be through advisors, mentors, all this sort of thing. Like I said, AIM is really providing all of this and will really help you out. And then finally, it's just doing the hard work, grinding, putting in the hours, all this sort of thing, and being ambitious and wanting to make a difference. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal experience through this. So you can see here I'm in Zimbabwe, meeting some of our stakeholders. Here I'm at AVA, meeting with some of the African animal welfare advocates. And this was part of our online program. And I want to say that I think it's a really fulfilling passion job. And, I get so much out of it in terms of the impact and making a difference. I think there are definitely challenges, and you would surely face challenges in terms of, for us, I think funding was a challenge. We started the project as volunteers for 5 months. So we worked without any pay before getting our first grant. And then we almost ran out of money a couple of times. But it's a really interesting, unique job where you're on the cutting edge. So whatever you start, you're going to be really pushing the field forward and have a lot of potential to make a big difference. So with all that said, think about this question quite deeply. Have you listened to this talk and thought, oh, this is right up my alley. Like, I want to do this. I'm passionate about this. Or maybe you're like, this is not quite for me. Or maybe you feel like maybe later. So really reflect on how you feel about the idea of starting something, and if you're kind of open to the risk of it. But I would say, there's never a better time to do it than now. Maybe you think, oh, I'll do it after my studies or this sort of thing. I would say if you have any inclination, you should give it a go. Apply through the links, do the quiz. But this will be a good reflection. So think quite hard about how you actually feel about this idea as well, because it would be your career. You would be doing this for potentially years. So think about that as well. Okay, so now you have the self-scoring aspect. You have how excited you feel about it. Hopefully you have a chance to do the quiz, maybe at home. And then, as I mentioned earlier, these are the other 3 things you can try to see if you're a good fit. I think if you did all of these, you're going to have an excellent idea if this is for me or not. One thing that's interesting to think about is just how much you enjoy doing the quiz, how much you enjoyed writing your application. When I went through it and I was going through the interview stages, I was like, wow, this is like exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for. I was very excited about it. So these will give you a really good feel for if you're a good fit as well. So here's just some facts about it. I think the first one's interesting. 50% of the most successful founders from previous years were doubting whether they should apply. So, I think there's some imposter syndrome here. And if you have any inclination, you're excited, you should apply anyway. The worst that can happen is it's not going to work out. That's fine. Nothing lost. And then, no one comes into the program qualified to start a charity. I certainly didn't. It's been a learning process. The course is really to solve that. You're going to get better as time goes on. Fact 3, I think I mentioned, you can cultivate and train all of these traits. And you're in a really good position to do so because there's a lot of resources. Even just checking out that Ambitious Impact website, there's many blogs, posts, ideas. When I applied, I looked through every single blog they wrote. That was a bit less when I did it, but I read all the recommended reading. You can really do it if you want to. And again, the most impactful time to start is right now. So don't think, oh, I want to put it off. I'm going to do it later. Like I said, some people applied when they were 18 years old. That's the youngest person that went through. Some people dropped out of school. So, now is really the time. Okay, that's everything. I want to open the floor for Q&A again. We didn't have as much time for the last one, but hopefully that gave you some ideas and thoughts about if you want to do this as a project.
Please, let's join our hands together for Cameron. Thank you so much, Cameron. That was an insightful workshop for those of us that was actually following. And one key takeaway for me is that Cameron said in all the traits that was shown that you can actually cultivate them. So it's not that it's an inherent trait. So it's something that if you're really interested and ambitious in starting a impactful charity, you can work on and probably prepare yourself for such. Without much ado, I believe we have questions for those of us that had wanted to ask questions in the first section. Probably if you still have your question, this is time to maybe ask Cameron. The floor is open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the insightful presentation. My question is, I like the fact that the attributes you just showcased to us, that they could be learned. There is always hope for someone to learn them. So the question is, can you briefly maybe take us through the journey? What should we expect? What's the journey like? Are there any ups and downs that we should know of beforehand?
Yeah, totally. In terms of the actual program itself, I think it's a very intense experience. It's a 2-month training program. That said, it is very dense. You're going to get a lot out of it. The ups and downs of the program is, well, you might be learning things where you're like, I have no understanding of this. For me specifically, one very difficult aspect was doing the cost-effective analysis. I'm not really deep into the research and making spreadsheets and this sort of thing. So I was like, I do not get this at all. So that was a challenge for me. Fortunately, my co-founder Lynn is like super deep into research and numbers, so she was able to help with that. Other aspects I think that can be challenging is you can feel a little bit in the lurch in the sense that you're meeting all these different potential co-founders and you're like, do I want to found with this one? Am I more interested in this person? And then you have all the different ideas and you're like, okay, is this idea interesting to me? In my cohort, for example, there was a shrimp idea and I was kind of looking at that. I was like, am I interested in this? In the end, I decided I wasn't. It was just not as broad. I'm a bit more of a bigger picture thinker, which is why I ended up doing Animal Advocacy Africa. So that's a couple of the ups and downs. Maybe some of the more positive aspect is you're surrounded by a really high talent dense group cohort of individuals, and like you're probably going to make lifelong friends with them. You know, I'm still friends with everyone from my cohort and we chat all the time. So it's really nice to be around people just like you, and they also push you forward and help you in that way. And all the staff like help mentor you, can help with various different aspects of the project too.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Please, I want to ask because I checked the different categories that you guys have. So I saw the entrepreneur or entrepreneurship aspect of it. So, and of course, I know there are different kind of businesses for those that want to go into the entrepreneurship space. So I want to know, are there limitations to the kind of businesses or entrepreneurship that you guys support? And also, do you have, because I know there are very like a kind of high impact business that might require a huge amount of money, and if such business have looking for a funding that is beyond what you people can support. So do you have a kind of people that are ready to invest if the business is something that can generate revenue in the long term? So do you have such?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. Yeah, it's a really good question. So in terms of the for-profit program or the Founding to Give program, the idea being that you make a lot of money and donate it, it's a new program. So, you know, they'll be running it for the first time. So there's definitely a lot more risk involved than this traditional charity entrepreneurship program that I mentioned. That said, they have a network of seed funders already. Yeah, I mean, this organization itself is very well networked in the funding space. They know a lot of people who have a lot of money, essentially. They also know VCs, angel investors, this sort of thing. And like, they are going to have things set up where when you come out of that program, you're going to have a seed grant ready to go, essentially. So it will be enough to bootstrap the organization, and then you would probably be looking at moving on to, you know, your Series A, Series B fundraising rounds. Yeah, they're going to have networks and connections there, but yeah, the initial seed funding is in place. So you would have essentially a salary. You know, there's a bit less risk than, like, say you were just to start now. It would be hard because you wouldn't have the connections, you wouldn't have the funding right away. So yeah, they have a really, really strong network. It's probably one of the most advantageous things of being part of this community is just the network of people who are involved, including funders, including evaluators, including experts, business people. So yeah, I think being part of this cohort like gives you a big advantage there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cameron. So my question is in line with volunteering for charitable foundation and stuff like that. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and this particular topic happens like regularly, but a lot of people don't actually discuss or talk about them. And this problem is the fact that sometimes in the process of volunteering or giving out yourself, your value, your time to like volunteer for organizations and the likes, how do you strike a balance between not exceeding your boundaries or doing too much and like avoiding being used? Because sometimes when you give out your time, your effort, you don't actually get what you're supposed to get in return from some of these organizations. But as a person who is passionate about service for humanity or making impacts, you just enjoy the process. So how do you strike a balance?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think the first thing is, and it speaks to the collaborative mindset and communication, like really being skilled at communication is very important. So being able to set your own boundaries and making sure that the organization and yourself are on the same page when you have a volunteering agreement. I mean, even writing that agreement down and saying, I'm going to work 5 hours a week or, whatever else is, and then signing it, having them sign it. I mean, one thing to think about there is also, doing background research on the organization, speaking to someone who's worked there before and, getting a reference essentially and them saying, oh, this was not a good place to work. They screwed me over, or, oh, these people were really collaborative and they helped me. Maybe one thing to add to that is I do recommend just reaching out to various different organizations, finding the right person through LinkedIn or otherwise, and just asking people, because I think you'd be surprised how many people are open to volunteers. I know at least a lot of the charity entrepreneurship charities are. We had a volunteer who came aboard who moved to a full-time position. So that's common as well, or part-time. So yeah, I mean, volunteering is a great way to get involved. Of course, if you really have very little skills, you might need to do it for free to kind of like build up your portfolio and CV. But yeah, you do need to be cautious of if they're going to use you and have your own boundaries and so forth.
All right, thank you so much, Cameron.
Having listened to your presentation, sir, I want to ask, like most of other organizations that spoke earlier and yesterday, they've expressed maybe one or two challenges they've been experiencing coming down to communities and everything. So I want to ask, having come from maybe another continent down to Africa, have you thought of maybe investigating what are the skepticisms, like what are those skeptical mindsets that you need to change before venturing into Africa first as an organization? Because I believe there are so many things that when you are coming into a continent like this, for example, having different cultures, religions, and everything. So many people will have some receptive mindsets about these kind of things. So what strategy do you adopt in trying to convince people to buy into this idea? And
Yeah, great question. I think first of all, one solution to that is actually recruiting people here in Nigeria. That's why I'm talking here. We want to get you guys on board, so please do apply. That said, I think there can be a good combination of, someone on the ground here from Nigeria working with someone from, let's say, the West. And then, you might be doing more of the programming here, having the on the ground experience, and maybe they're doing more of like the fundraising and getting a lot of money from, I don't know, the US or UK or whatever. So there can be a kind of like natural collaboration. But I think in general, yes, there needs to be more research done into this kind of topic. And I think coming in, you have to come in with an open mind. I can speak for Animal Advocacy Africa. What we're really focused on doing is empowering individuals here and not like saying, oh, do this, do that. We're, okay, you guys want to do a project on this aspect of animal welfare. How can we help you achieve that? How can we funnel funding towards that? So yeah, that's kind of a summary of my thoughts there. Are there any kind of like concerns or doubts you would have about joining the program? Because I think that's always useful information to the people who run it, because they want to hear your feedback so they can improve for the next people who come through.
All right, please, can you join your hands together as Cameron take to his way?
Maybe I'll just say, please, everyone, do apply. They're looking for Nigerian applications, so do give it a shot.